Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is December 8th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to an early winter in O'Fallon, Illinois. Today, I want to talk about the U.S. federal government policy on U.S. citizenship. As you are aware of, the birthright citizenship case from the Trump administration has come up again, and I wanted to dig in and give you some facts that you may not know. So I want to start off with what is U.S. citizenship currently today. So if we look at the 14th Amendment, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. And then it goes into no state shall make or enforce any laws that shall abridge the privileges, and it goes on with the flavor. We are focused on all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Now, I'm going to come back to that because that's very important for this case that the Trump administration is getting this Supreme Court to review and either validate what the administration is saying or validate what the critics are saying. But one quick point. The Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So there's 5 parts to the 14th Amendment, and I just talked about parts 1 and 5. And what I just said will become important in a second when I dig into some of the other details. All right. So, as I said, citizenship is rooted in the 14th Amendment. So, core principles: birthright citizenship. Anyone born in the U.S. is generally a citizen per the 14th Amendment. We all know that. Citizenship by blood. Children born abroad to U.S. citizen parents can acquire citizenship with specific parental physical presence rules. And then you have naturalization, a path for lawful permanent residents, which is LPRs, to become citizens through the application and meeting requirements. Now, we are familiar with the naturalization because this is what comes up a lot of the time in the country. All right. So, key law, 14th Amendment, as you're aware of. There's also something called the Immigration and Nationality Act, sets the legal framework for naturalization and citizenship acquisition. Right. And typically, naturalization comes with residency, typically 5 years as an LPR or 3 years married to a U.S. citizen, good moral character, demonstrating adherence to our laws, and then English and civics, passing tests on U.S. history, government, and English proficiency, and then taking the oath of allegiance. So, there's something called derivation. Children under 18 may automatically become citizens through their U.S. citizen parents. All right. And that's military, government employees, specific provisions exist for children of U.S. Armed Forces or government employees stationed abroad. Okay. So that's all of the categories covered. Now, let's dig into the issue of the birthright citizenship. Now, remember the executive order, and let me read it to you. This was signed January 20th of 2025 when President Donald Trump took the oath of office for his second term. The executive order says this: denying citizenship to persons born from a mother who was unlawfully present in the United States and the father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said birth, or when the person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary, such as but not limited to visiting the United States under the auspices of the Visa Waiver Program, or visiting on a student, work, or tourist visa, and the father was not a U.S. citizen or LPR at the time of said person's birth. Now, that is a mouthful. So why is that important? I'm trying to illustrate the point of that's what it specifically says. And as I've said in the past, some agencies, some news agencies are trying to make it look like that no matter who you are, if you haven't been in the United States the last 20 years, you're not a citizen. And that is absolutely untrue. They are specifically talking about individuals who come into the country illegally, and we refer to them as undocumented people in the United States. Now, the legal issue is, do the people, the kids in this category, automatically become U.S. citizens? Now, I read you what the 14th Amendment says. So the legal issue with the Trump administration, that they are saying that undocumented people in the country, their kids can't be citizens, is when they use the language jurisdiction thereof. So what that means is that if you are here illegally and undocumented, if you have kids, you at that point, the parent was not under the legal jurisdiction of the United States, so therefore the kid could not be a U.S. citizen. That is the legal question. Now, if you look at what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has said, okay, so he made some comments. Okay, so it's important not to go through all of them, but to talk about the essence of what he's saying. He said, meaning Trump, the so-called birthright citizenship, which costs our country billions of dollars, is very unfair to our citizens. And of course, he says it be ended one way or the other. And it's not covered by the 14th Amendment because of the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And like I previously explained, that means that if you're here illegally, you're not under the jurisdiction of U.S. law, so you can't be protected. Then the second thing he said was billions of dollars, meaning welfare, are being spent on these children because they are considered U.S. citizens, so their parents, even though they are here illegally, they have the same rights since their kids do, basically. All right, so It is understood that an executive order, act of Congress, or a Supreme Court decision, or a constitutional amendment ending automatic citizenship at birth on American soil would pertain to undocumented aliens. And again, to reiterate, even the person writing this said, not lawful permanent residents. Okay, that is important. Now, there's a case that I want to talk about. There was a Supreme Court decision, Wong Kim Ark established a right to birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented aliens. The citizenship clause is the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, and it reads, all persons are born or naturalized, and I've said that about 6 times, so I don't need to say it again. That's what the left is using to say that undocumented people, their kids are U.S. citizens. Well, in the case of Wong Kim Ark, his parents were here legally, so it didn't apply. So it was means people physically born in the United States qualify as citizens. Much of this precedent is based on the Wong Kim Ark decision, like I said, but they left out that his parents were actually U.S. citizens. And the issue back then was, even though his parents were Chinese citizens, they were subject to the jurisdiction thereof because they were here legally. And also, there was a threat at the time that people from China were spies in the country. That's what it basically came down to. Right? So that's what the other side was using as their justification that illegal immigrants could, in fact, be, their children could be citizens and therefore have the rights and privileges, because what they don't ever talk about is what that gives the children access to and the family. It's the benefits of Medicare. It's also the benefits of SNAP and etc. And everything seems to come back to having the taxpayers in the United States fund programs to include everyone that comes into the country illegally. And the courts, rightfully so, get to weigh in, because remember, in the past podcasts, I say that that is their job. Also, I talked about Congress. Congress has not had the will to do new laws that would have to be done to amend the Constitution. Neither have the states. And instead of doing the hard work, if enough people feel like that a law should include anyone that comes into the country, no matter what their circumstance is, to make them a citizen, the other side, meaning the left in this case, has to do the work. And the voters have to weigh in on it and say, yes, we agree that we're going to pay taxes that are going to fund these programs. And the last thought on this is, all we're talking about is undocumented people who are the illegal people in the country specifically. That's what the executive order on birthright citizenship says. And oh, by the way, we all know that executive orders, once the other party comes to the White House, can be taken away. So the loom and doom that people are saying, that doesn't work either. And we should be talking about this and the validity. And when the Supreme Court rules on things in favor or dissent, that's important. And our process is being followed. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Went a little long on that last point. Just make sure that you understand where your tax dollars are going and to hear the complete picture of birthright citizenship. Have a great day.